Hogwarts Legacy came out 1 year ago, and to celebrate that, I thought it would be fun to make a video looking back at the story of the game. When I looked back, I came to the conclusion that the story of this game should be the standard of what Harry Potter adaptations should be. Just to be clear though, for this video, I'm not looking at the gameplay or even the game itself. I'm simply looking at the story this game told. Now, there will be spoilers, so if you haven't played the game and don't want to be spoiled, spoiler warning. Also, if you enjoy this video, hit that like button. It will greatly help the channel with the algorithm. And if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button, and you can also follow me on all of my other social medias, all of which are linked down below, and all of which house similar content that I make here on this channel. Now that I've said that, let's get into it. Hogwarts Legacy combines every aspect of the wizarding world, first by paying respect to the 7 Harry Potter books, then by paying respect to the visuals from the 8 Harry Potter films, then by incorporating lore that Rowling released after the series ended on Pottermore, aka Wizarding World, and on top of that, adding elements from the prequel Fantastic Beasts films, adding almost every single beast that was in those movies. It combines and respects all of that, while also adding its own entirely new lore to the franchise. This game has many parallels to the original story of Harry Potter, despite the fact that it takes place 100 years before the 7 books, and this is how it pays respect to what came before it. Many of the characters align with characters from the novels. Professor Fig is Professor Dumbledore, both being the man that helps the hero through their journey, and who ultimately dies in the end, leaving behind the hero they helped mold. Professor Weasley is Professor McGonagall, both holding the role of assistant headmistress, both teaching transfiguration, and both being warm but also strict at the same time. A great example of this is how both consoled the hero after losing either Dumbledore or Fig. Meanwhile, Isadora is a lot like Voldemort, both going to Hogwarts and showing great promise, then both leaving for years as they travel abroad, ultimately returning with some form of dark magic. For Voldemort, it was Horcruxes, and for Isadora, it was the magical form of pain. And there's a lot more. We have a trio of friends with Ominous, Sebastian, and Anne, and just like the Golden Trio, it's 2 boys and 1 girl. Gareth Weasley is a prankster and jokester, making him bear a close resemblance to his descendants, Fred and George Weasley. You could also compare Victor Rookwood to Bellatrix Lestrange, Doran, the only centaur who stood up for the humans, could be compared to Firenze, and even Poppy could be compared to Neville Longbottom, both having a love for something, whether that be magical beasts or plants, both living with their grandmother, and both having something that made them distant from their parents. Poppy turned her back on her parents and their poacher lifestyle, and Neville wasn't really able to interact with his parents who lost their minds. Adding these parallels makes this story feel familiar for those who love the books and movies, but while it does pay respect for what came before it, it also adds a new twist and changes it enough to be able to make it stand out on its own. This is clear with the character development in the game. Hogwarts Legacy created characters that really shine through, each having so much depth to them. For example, each professor has a complex backstory, the most interesting of these being Professor Sharp and Professor Kagawa. Sharp was a former Auror until he lost his partner in combat, which made him hang it up and teach at Hogwarts. Meanwhile, Professor Kagawa, who I think has the most interesting backstory, was about to play professional Quidditch, but withdrew herself when she found out that her friend had given her liquid luck before the tryout. She burned her broom in disgrace and never played Quidditch again, instead teaching flying at Hogwarts. Similarly, the character of Natsai Onai, or Natty, has a very well-developed character arc. She comes from the wizarding school Wagadoo in Africa, which is a great detail by the way. I love that they threw that in there. As we learn her story, we find out that her father was an animagus who lost his life by jumping in front of a bullet to save his daughter. Later in the game, Natty then follows in her late father's footsteps, jumping in front of us and taking the Cruciatus curse in our place. This of course makes her story come full circle, and she realizes that she shouldn't feel guilty about her father's choice, just as she says that we shouldn't feel guilty for the choice Natty made to protect us.
You, my friend, are no more to blame for my injuries today than I am to blame for my father's sacrifice years ago.
This is such great writing that deserves a lot of credit. Then we have Sebastian's great character development. We find out that when he was young, alongside his twin sister Anne, he watched his parents die from a toxin, he and Anne being able to do nothing to stop it. This loss and this feeling of helplessness drives him when his sister Anne gets sick later in life. He'll do anything to heal her, but this ends up driving him too far, actually leading to him going kind of insane. He uses the unforgivable curses, first using the Imperious curse on a goblin to make it stab itself, and then using the killing curse on his uncle when he tried to stop him. Unlike Natty and Poppy, Sebastian does not get a happy ending, losing his twin sister Anne forever.
You've made your choice.
This character arc really highlights the stakes that this game has in their story. It's not all rainbows and butterflies, it's very raw and very real, which I love. And speaking of broken sibling relationships, Ranrock, the main villain, and his brother Lodgok have a very compelling arc as well. Lodgok helped his brother with his plan at first, but after his interaction with Fig's wife Miriam, he changed sides and did the right thing, helping us put a stop to Ranrock's plans. Ranrock killed Miriam when he found this out though, and even kept her wand, which just makes you hate him. And this ultimately culminates to Ranrock killing his brother as well.
You are a traitor to our kind!
Ranrock himself is a very compelling villain, and he also has one of the most tragic backstories I've ever heard. When he was young, he used to sneak into dragon camps, and one day he finally worked up the courage to ask the wizard in charge if he could join them, just trying to find a home. As he approached, he noticed that the wizard dropped his wand, so doing what he thought was a kind gesture, he picked it up and handed it to the wizard. However, the wizard didn't see it that way. He was so enraged at the sight of a goblin with a wand that he beat Ranrock nearly to death. From then on, Ranrock hated wizard kind, and rightly so. Isadora, the other villain, is also super intriguing. They really hit it out of the park with the villains in this game. As I said earlier, Isadora became obsessed with pain, and more specifically, with removing the pain from people. This all started with an okay idea, which was her wanting to take the pain away from her father after losing Isadora's younger brother. However, like Sebastian, Isadora takes this way too far, and like Sebastian, she loses it. She eventually starts inhaling the pain she takes out of people, which is some next level psycho shit. Through it all though, Isadora doesn't see anything wrong with what she's doing, even saying at one point that the Four Keepers would understand eventually.
I only need to keep it safe until I can convince my colleagues of its worth.
Isadora is so convinced that what she's doing is right that she even uses this magic on students. Inhaling this pain does make her stronger, which is a metaphor for many famous sayings, and in the end, she takes on the Four Keepers by herself, holding her own, and only loses because of a cheap shot killing curse. Once again, there are real stakes, and the three main stories I just went over all end the same way, with someone being murdered. The story of Hogwarts Legacy also explores the complexity of humans and other beings, the most obvious being with Ranrock and his army of goblins hating wizard kind. And it's a two-way street. Wizards hate goblins just as much as goblins hate wizards. This becomes very interesting when looking at the dynamic between Victor Rookwood and Ranrock. The two form a partnership, but neither fully trust the other, mainly because of what they are and the history that these two species share, which is nothing good. There are 3 goblin rebellions in Wizarding World history that led to a war between goblins and humans, so there's a lot of bad blood. This leads to a lot of tension between Ranrock and Rookwood, and ultimately, that distrust leads to Rookwood trying to kill Ranrock with the killing curse, but he misses. It's really interesting to see how this divide between humans and goblins is so present in every era of the Wizarding World, and in my opinion, this game depicts the best example of it. Sebastian's story also plays a part in this divide between humans and goblins as well. He assumed that a goblin was the one who cursed his sister Anne, despite the fact that he didn't see the person who did it, he only heard them. He spends the whole game hating goblins for this, but as it turns out, we get a huge plot twist that it was actually Rookwood, a human, who cursed Anne, not a goblin, which changes everything in Sebastian's eyes. This is such complex writing that's masterfully done, as we see how each arc in this game perfectly parallels each other and comes together. Similar to the tension between goblins and wizard kind, we see a divide between centaurs and humans as well, which I mentioned a bit earlier with Doran standing up for us and Poppy. The centaurs have no trust or respect for humans.
Their kind continue to slaughter beasts like us without a care.
But in the end, they're forced to trust us and Poppy if they want to save the Snidgets. This leads to both species coming together and succeeding with teamwork in the end. This arc shows how you can prosper in unity, and we see a positive conclusion to this divide, which we weren't able to see with the Goblin story arc. Just like Sebastian, Natty, and Poppy, some get a happy ending and some don't, which makes this game feel so much more real. Lore-wise, this game did a fantastic job, as it incorporated so many things from the books and Pottermore, J.K. Rowling's website. First off, it gets Hogwarts Castle absolutely perfect, playing on how it was described in the books, what it looked like in the movies, and adding their own spin to make it their own. We not only get an expansion of the castle, but we also see the Hufflepuff common room for the first time, we see more of the surrounding area around the castle in Hogsmeade, and it just expands the world of Harry Potter in a great way. Earlier I mentioned Snidgets, which I said was great Harry Potter lore, because it actually came out after the series ended. Snidgets are birds that were thought to be extinct after people used them as the original golden snitch. They used to catch it and kill the bird, so the fact that they were able to add this to the story was really special and really impressive. Then other notable lore that they added includes other wizarding schools like Wagadoo, where Natty used to go. They showed us the inside of Azkaban prison for the first time, which we had only seen the outside of. They add characters that the movies didn't have but that the books did, like Professor Binns, Peeves the Poltergeist, and even Phineas Nigellus Black, who we see in his heyday as headmaster, and they even made him a terrible headmaster just as they told us he was in the book. They also incorporated the Room of Requirement, and more specifically, the Room of Hidden Things. They added the Department of Mysteries and how Professor Hecat was an unspeakable who worked there. They have Animagi, Liquid Luck, Polyjuice Potion, the Deathly Hallows, the 3 Unforgivable Curses, Pensive Memories, and even more specific things like the movement for the Killing Curse being in a lightning bolt shape explaining Harry's scar, or the one-eyed witch statue which led to the passageway that the Marauder's map told us about, and the list goes on and on. You can tell that the creators of this game are true Harry Potter fans, and they put their all into it, which I respect immensely. The piece of lore that I want to discuss specifically though is the Deathly Hallows. They tell us the tale of the 3 brothers in a masterful way, and just like in the movie, they have a different way of animating the story. I love the art style that they used for this, and I love that they were able to make us the master of death in such a creative, and most of all, temporary way. I feel like it would have been a cop-out to make us be the master of death and just would have overpowered us in general. I think it's very fitting that we were only the master of death for that trial. And while they incorporated all of that existing lore, they also managed to create their own lore that adds a lot to the Wizarding World franchise. We find out about ancient magic and learn that Hogwarts was built by ancient magic when the 4 founders built the castle. They also explained what that skeleton in the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom is.
It was a token from the Great Poacher Raid of 1878. No doubt you've heard of it.
And they also added more characters to existing families, most notably the Weasleys with Matilda Weasley as well as Gareth Weasley, and also the Gaunt family with Ominous and his brothers, sisters, and parents, and who are of course related to Voldemort's mother's side of the family. Living up to the Gaunt name, they gave Ominous a tragic backstory, as he refused to use the Cruciatus Curse on Muggles, so to punish him, his family used it on him instead. Just another example of great character development. The different beats of the story were so well done as well, starting off with kick-ass action while also staying true to the lore, as we see Thestrals after watching George die in the opening sequence. And I've already highlighted that the main chunk of the story is super engaging with high stakes, great character development, and great stories that parallel both each other and also beats from the original series. One thing I didn't highlight though was the humor, which this game has plenty of, as any good Harry Potter story should. One of my favorite examples of this was when we used Polyjuice Potion to become Headmaster Black, which leads to all sorts of hilarious comedy.
I've brewed the cure for boils you wanted. I can drop it by your office when it's convenient.
Of course, yes. No need for all the cloak and dagger. Simply have a student deliver it.
A student.
And while we started the story with a bang, the game definitely ended with a bang too, bringing all of the professors together to help in this battle and really showing their true power. I also mentioned how the death of Fig really affected the hero and also we as an audience, and that final battle facing off against Ranrock one more time is a very satisfying end to a great story. The story of this game is so faithful to the Wizarding World franchise, and as I said, it hits every level of the franchise, touching on the books, the movies, the prequel films, and Pottermore, and brings it all together to tell one of the most engaging Harry Potter adaptations we've ever gotten. It is, in my eyes, the gold standard for Harry Potter adaptations moving forward.